tell us a little bit about the Electoral College and how it differs from the popular vote and why. This is hard to understand, and even Chelsey's nodding along as well.
Well, you got to sort of go back to the Constitutional Convention and figure out, so what were their options? And initially, when the presidency emerged late in the convention, everybody knew you needed a Congress, and there's probably some sentiment for a court decision, but people weren't quite sure, do we want a singular or a plural executive? How strong should it be? They had two very contradictory visions in front of them. One was that governors at the time at the state level were very weak, often had one-year terms, often very ineffective. And on the other hand, you had George III, whom they had just rebelled against, didn't want to create a monarch, particularly a hereditary monarch. So they started out, well, Congress will select the presidency. Well, if you do that, you essentially have a parliamentary system like you would have in England. And it doesn't work terribly well with separation of powers, because you would then have a president who would be absolutely beholden to the people who selected him and will decide whether to select him or not. So they tried to get around that by saying Congress will select a president, but only for one term. And then that was to keep them from, him from corrupting the legislature. But over time, people said, well, our governors are ineffective. We need someone with greater power than the governors have. And they created the president independently, and then they had to figure out how to choose him. The obvious way to do it is by popular vote. But that's obvious because we have computers, and that's obvious because we have telecommunications. And I might know a senator from New York better than I know my own. Or, a prominent member of the House more than I would know my local representative. And so what they did is they said, we'll have each state elect a number of individuals, sort of representative democracy, much like Congress. We will elect people who will choose the president for us. And then big issue, how are we going to allocate the electors? Well, we'd already had a big controversy in the convention over how are we going to represent states.
Right.
Large populous states said it should be by population. The non-populous states said no, every state should be represented equally as they were under the Articles of Confederation. And the compromise is representation according to population in the House, equal representation in the U.S. Senate. So the Electoral College, when it was formulated, simply incorporated that compromise. How do we decide how many votes a state gets? Well, we'll add together their total number of representatives, which is based on population, and then we'll add 2, which is how many everybody has in the Senate.
Okay.
And so each candidate now who wins, each party candidate, so Harris on one side will say, you're going to vote for this slate of people. I believe Tennessee, I should know, I can't remember if it's 11 or 12, but let's say it's 11. These 11 people have pledged that if you vote for them, they're going to cast their vote for me. So I'm really voting for the electors, but I'm voting with and the same for the Republicans.
That they're going to go and vote for my presidential nominee.
Right. Now, the Constitution doesn't specify how states divvy up their electors.
Oh.
But right now, all but 2 states, they tell you how many electors each state has, but they don't say it has to be winner take all. But all states except Maine and Nebraska, neither of which are particularly populous, currently allocate according to a winner-take-all formula. So if there are 20 million votes in California and you have 10 million and 1, and the other side only has 10 million, you're going to get all 50-some, 60-some California electors.
So no matter what, each of those specific people would have voted on their own.
Well, for the 50 people, right. It'll probably go Democratic. That's the expectation for California. Each of those people that you voted for if you click the Harris Walsh ticket, have said they're going to vote for her. but
Okay.
you get all the votes instead of, well, you only got 51% of the vote, you should get half. No, but that's by state decision. And in fact, I think some states would be wise to go ahead and do what Nebraska and Maine have done,